So today I'm going to be talking to you all about the foot and ankle complex. So I can pretty much guarantee that most of you don't train your feet the same way that you train the rest of your body. Why is that? By not addressing kind of everything up the kinetic chain, you're leaving seconds, minutes on the clock, you're increasing your risk of injury, and you're also not using your full performance capabilities. So during running and walking gait, the first part of your body to hit the ground is your foot, and that causes kind of a chain reaction of events up the kinetic chain. So your foot is kind of like a spring-like mechanism. So pronation, supination are normal. We need those to release and to store and release energy. The issue that arises when those motions are uncontrolled. So how to determine your foot strategy. So the first thing I'm going to have you do is stand up and balance on one leg. Good. And I want you to think about where your center of pressure is, where your center of balance is. Is it on the outside? Is it on the inside? Maybe kind of right on the heel? For most of us, we lack the mobility or just the motor control to really load that first ray or the ball of that big toe. And that is partially due to just years and years in our culture of wearing high cushion shoes that decrease our proprioception with the ground. So that first ray, that first metatarsal, the ball of your big toe, that is our shock absorber when we land. The outside of the foot here, that's a rigid lever that we need to push off from. So if we can't get that first ray down, that first metatarsal ball of the big toe, then we can't properly load our foot, and as a result, dysfunction can follow up the kinetic chain. So our cortical homunculus is essentially a map of brain areas that are responsible for motor control and motor processing of different parts of the body. So our hands take up a huge portion of that pie. Just think about how much we do with our hands on a daily basis. Our feet actually take up a much smaller portion, in part due to our society of just wearing shoes all the time every day. So the beautiful thing about the brain is its neuroplasticity, or its ability to kind of change and adapt itself to its environment. So we can kind of alter this homunculus by feeding it with movements to strengthen those neural pathways in the foot and improve foot control. So the first exercise I am going to show you guys to kind of help improve that motor control is called toe yoga. So what I'm going to have you do is alternate pressing your big toes to the ground, lifting all the four little toes, and then you're going to switch. So then pressing the little toes to the ground and lifting the big toes. So Brian here is going to demonstrate this. So we're going to go ahead and press big toes into the ground, lifting those little toes into the air. Good. And then switch. So little toes to the ground, big toe to the air. And this is difficult and pretty challenging if you've never done this before, just to get that motor control. And sometimes it can take weeks to kind of develop that control and get those neural pathways a little bit stronger. So now we're going to work on what we call Firstrate plantar flexion. So essentially just practicing loading that first ray or that ball of the big toe. So what I'm going to have you do, just kind of standing, and all these exercises obviously should be barefoot. You're going to practice stepping out to the side and really loading through that first ray, really pushing down as hard as you can, and then stepping across behind you. Again, really trying to focus on loading that first ray and not putting the weight on the outside of your foot. So again, stepping out, really press down into that ball of the big toe, and then coming across behind you. Again, really pressing down. And then you can come. The next progression we're going to work on is more of a single leg balance. So I call these my single leg 3D, because we're working on all three planes of motion, balance taps. So the important part of this exercise is that balance on the single leg and really controlling kind of the movements in three planes of motion. So we're going to get some dorsiflexion, we're going to work on plantar flexion, kind of pressing that big toe into the ground. So just tapping forward and back. Really try not to scrunch your toes as you're doing these exercises. Really think about just that big toe, that ball of the big toe into the ground. Next, we're going to go side to side, out to the side, crossing over to the other side. So my shoulders are going the opposite way of my foot. So this is kind of throwing off my center of balance just a little bit. And then the third way is going to be rotation, so working in this transverse plane. So I'm rotating my whole body out, causing a little bit of pronation in my foot, which is what we want, but it's controlled. And as I cross over to the other side, my foot is supinating out, again, which is what we want, but it's controlled.